The gun was already pointed at her chest when Evelyn Cross realized the man she'd spent 20 minutes destroying might be the only thing standing between her and a body bag. The quiet maintenance worker she'd called pathetic. The single father whose worn work boots she'd mocked. The man whose very existence she'd dismissed as beneath her notice. He was moving now, and nothing about him looked quiet anymore. His hands were already in motion, his body a coiled weapon, and Evelyn understood with crystalline terror that she'd gotten everything catastrophically wrong. But that realization came too late, in a cafe-turned-hostage scene, with her name on the kidnapper's lips and her entire billion-dollar empire suddenly worth exactly nothing. Before we dive into how a blind date became a battlefield and a CEO learned what real power looks like, I want you to stay with me until the very end of this story. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let me take you back to where it all started. One rainy Manhattan afternoon, one terrible assumption, and the 20 minutes of cruelty that almost got Evelyn Cross killed. The rain had started that morning as a whisper against the windows of Cross Industries' 53rd floor executive suite, but by 3 o'clock it had grown into a steady percussion that made the glass shiver. Evelyn Cross stood at those windows, phone pressed to her ear, watching water stream down the Manhattan skyline, like the city itself was weeping. She wasn't listening to her chief operating officer's concerns about the Singapore merger. She was calculating exit strategies, not from the deal, but from the blind date her assistant had somehow bullied her into accepting. "Reschedule the board meeting," she said, cutting off mid-sentence whatever Marcus had been saying about tariff complications. "And Marcus? Next time you bring me problems, bring solutions with them. That's what I pay you for." She ended the call before he could respond. Evelyn had built a $12 billion tech empire by making decisions faster than her competitors could form committees, and she applied the same efficiency to every aspect of her life, including, apparently, charity dates arranged by well-meaning employees who didn't understand that Evelyn Cross didn't do romance. She did acquisitions, negotiations, and occasionally hostile takeovers. Romance was just another market she'd decided not to enter. Her phone buzzed, a text from her assistant, Jennifer. "He's confirmed for 4 p.m. at Rousseau's. His name is Daniel Reed. Be nice." Evelyn's perfectly manicured finger hovered over the screen. Be nice. As if kindness was a strategy that had ever built anything worth having. As if the world rewarded softness with anything other than exploitation. She'd learned that lesson in a Philadelphia row house with a father who drank away grocery money and a mother who worked 3 jobs and still apologized for not providing more. Evelyn had clawed her way out of that poverty with razor-sharp intelligence and absolutely zero tolerance for weakness, in herself or anyone else. She would go to this date. She would give it 30 minutes, 45 if he proved interesting. Then she would return to the work that actually mattered. The empire she'd built from nothing, the hundreds of employees whose livelihoods depended on her ruthlessness, the legacy that would outlast whatever fleeting comfort romance pretended to offer. Rousseau's occupied a corner of the Upper East Side that managed to feel both exclusive and welcoming, which was exactly why Evelyn had chosen it. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the carefully curated art, the clientele that knew better than to stare. It was her territory, her advantage. She arrived at 3:55, exactly fashionable enough to establish control without appearing rude. The maitre d' greeted her by name. "Miss Cross, your table is ready. Your companion hasn't arrived yet." "Of course he hasn't," Evelyn murmured, sliding into the booth with a view of the entrance. She ordered sparkling water with lime, nothing that would suggest she planned to stay long, and opened her phone to review quarterly projections while she waited. At 4:07, the door opened. Evelyn looked up, and her first thought was that there had been some terrible mistake. The man who entered Rousseau's didn't belong there. He wore work pants with paint stains near the knees, a canvas jacket that had seen better years, and boots that tracked rainwater across the polished floor. His dark hair was damp, pushed back from a face that might have been handsome if it wasn't so obviously exhausted. He carried himself with a certain quietness, shoulders slightly hunched as if he was used to making himself smaller, less noticeable. He was looking around the restaurant with the careful attention of someone checking exits, and when his eyes landed on Evelyn, something flickered across his features. Not excitement, not attraction, just a kind of tired recognition, like he'd already calculated how this would end. He approached the table. Evelyn Cross? His voice was low, roughened by something. Smoke, maybe, or years of not using it for anything important. Evelyn took in the calloused hands, the faint smell of industrial cleaner, the way he stood beside the booth rather than sitting down, waiting for permission. "You're Daniel Reed." It wasn't a question, it was an assessment, and they both knew it. "Yes, ma'am?" "Ma'am?" Evelyn felt something cold settle in her chest. This wasn't just a mismatch. This was an insult. Jennifer had set her up with a man who called her ma'am, who looked like he'd come straight from a construction site, who was now sitting down across from her with the careful movements of someone afraid of breaking something expensive. "I apologize for being late," Daniel said, not meeting her eyes. "There was an issue with one of the boilers at the hospital. I came as soon as I could get away." "The hospital?" Evelyn's voice was diamond sharp. "You work at a hospital?" "Yes, ma'am. St. Catherine's. I'm in maintenance." Maintenance. The word hung between them like a verdict. Evelyn had built empires. This man unclogged toilets. The waiter appeared, offering menus with practiced discretion. Daniel opened his, and Evelyn watched him scan the prices with visible discomfort. Everything about him radiated wrongness. The cheap watch, the calluses, the way his eyes kept darting to the door like he expected to be thrown out at any moment. "Order whatever you'd like," Evelyn said, her tone making it clear that whatever he liked would certainly be wrong. "I'm buying." Daniel's jaw tightened just slightly. "That's kind of you, but not necessary. I can pay for my own meal." "On a maintenance worker's salary? At these prices?" Evelyn smiled, and it was not kind. "Please, don't be ridiculous." Something flickered in Daniel's eyes, something darker than embarrassment, but he just nodded, closing the menu. "Coffee, then." "Black." "Coffee." Evelyn leaned back, studying him like a balance sheet that didn't add up. "You came to Rousseau's for coffee." "I came because Jennifer said you wanted to meet me." Jennifer has an unfortunate habit of overestimating compatibility. Evelyn ordered for both of them, salmon for herself, coffee for him, nothing that would require staying past the 30-minute mark. When the waiter left, she folded her hands on the table and delivered her opening assessment. "Let me save us both some time, Daniel. I'm going to be direct because I respect efficiency over social niceties. This," she gestured between them, "is clearly not going to work." Daniel's expression didn't change. "I see." "Do you?" Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "I don't think you do. You and I exist in completely different worlds. I run a company that employs 3,000 people across 7 countries. I negotiate with heads of state. My decisions move markets. And you," she let her gaze travel pointedly over his work clothes, "you fix boilers." "Yes, ma'am." "Stop calling me ma'am. It makes you sound like help." The words were out before she could stop them, and even Evelyn recognized they'd crossed a line. But Daniel just nodded slowly, something settling in his posture. Not defeat, something colder. "Understood," he said quietly. "I'm not trying to be cruel," Evelyn continued, though they both knew that was exactly what she was doing. "I'm being realistic. We have nothing in common. You work with your hands. I work with my mind. She paused, selecting her words with surgical precision. "You're a single father, correct?" Jennifer mentioned a daughter. "Yes, Maya. She's 7. And I assume her mother isn't in the picture, or you wouldn't be on blind dates arranged by hospital administrators who feel sorry for you." Daniel's hands, resting on the table, curled slightly. "Her mother died 4 years ago." Evelyn should have felt something at that. Sympathy, remorse, basic human decency. Instead, she felt vindicated. "I'm sorry for your loss, truly, but that only proves my point. You're a widower raising a child on a maintenance salary. Your priorities are obviously your daughter and your job. You don't have time for the kind of relationship someone like me would require. And frankly," she delivered the final cut, "I need a partner who can match me intellectually, professionally, socially, someone who understands the world I operate in. You seem like a perfectly nice man, Daniel, but you're not that person." The silence that followed was profound. Daniel sat perfectly still, his dark eyes fixed on something past Evelyn's shoulder. She'd expected anger, or at least wounded pride. Instead, he seemed to be listening to something she couldn't hear. "You're right," he said finally. "I'm not that person." Evelyn felt a flicker of something. Disappointment, maybe, that he'd folded so easily. "I appreciate your understanding. We can finish our drinks like civilized people, and then—" "There are 3 men by the bar," Daniel said quietly, his tone utterly unchanged. "They came in 2 minutes after I did. They're not drinking. They're watching you." Evelyn blinked. "Excuse me?" "The couple at the table near the kitchen, they're not a couple. They haven't looked at each other once. They're both watching the exits." Daniel's voice remained low, almost conversational, but something in it raised the hair on Evelyn's neck. "The waiter who just brought your water. He's not your regular waiter. He stumbled over the wine list. He doesn't work here." "What are you—" "Don't turn around." Daniel's hand moved slightly, palm down on the table between them, not touching her, but creating a boundary. "I need you to listen very carefully. In about 30 seconds, something bad is going to happen. When it does, I need you to stay calm and do exactly what I tell you." Evelyn stared at him. This was insane. This was some kind of bizarre attempt to make himself seem interesting, to salvage a date that had already crashed and burned. "If you think making up some ridiculous spy scenario is going to—" The front door opened. 3 more men entered, and everything about them was wrong. The way they moved, the bulges under their jackets, the cold assessment in their eyes as they scanned the restaurant. Daniel's posture changed. It was subtle, a straightening of the spine, a shift in weight. But suddenly, the tired maintenance worker was gone. The man across from Evelyn looked like a weapon waiting to be drawn. "When I move," he said, "you get under this table. You stay there until I come for you. Do you understand? This is ridiculous." One of the men by the bar reached into his jacket. Daniel moved. It happened so fast that Evelyn's mind couldn't process the sequence. One moment Daniel was sitting across from her, and the next he was standing, his body between her and the bar, his hand already in motion. The first gunman's weapon was barely clear of his jacket when Daniel's palm struck his wrist with a crack that echoed through the restaurant. The gun clattered to the floor. Someone screamed. The second gunman was raising his weapon, but Daniel was already there, impossibly fast, his elbow connecting with the man's throat. The gunman went down, choking. "Get down!" someone was shouting. Maybe one of the gunmen, maybe another patron. Evelyn couldn't tell through the sudden chaos of overturning tables and shattering glass. The third man by the bar had his gun out now, and he was aiming not at Daniel, but at Evelyn. Time seemed to slow. She could see everything with perfect clarity, the finger tightening on the trigger, the cold calculation in the man's eyes, the geometric certainty of the bullet's path. Daniel threw himself between them. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space. Daniel took the impact in his shoulder, spinning with the momentum but staying upright. And before the gunman could fire again, Daniel was on him. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a dismantling. Daniel moved with brutal efficiency, each strike calculated to disable, and within seconds the third gunman was on the floor, arm bent at an unnatural angle, weapon kicked across the polished wood. "Evelyn Cross!" the voice came from the front entrance. One of the new arrivals, a tall man with a European accent and a very steady gun. "Stop moving or we start killing everyone in this room." Daniel froze, hands visible, blood spreading across his shoulder. His eyes found Evelyn, who was still in the booth, paralyzed by shock. "You," the tall man said, gesturing with his weapon. "The billionaire. Stand up. Slowly." Evelyn's legs didn't want to work. Her entire body was locked in place, her mind screaming that this couldn't be happening, that people like her didn't end up in hostage situations in Manhattan cafes at 4 p.m. "Now!" She stood. Her hands were shaking. She'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without a tremor, but a gun pointed at her face reduced her to this, a terrified woman who suddenly couldn't remember how to breathe. "Good," the tall man said. "Very good. Now walk toward me. Your driver is waiting outside. We're going to take a little ride, you and I. Discuss some cryptocurrency transfers, some account numbers. Nothing personal, Ms. Cross. Just business." Daniel was 5 feet away, wounded, surrounded by armed men. He met Evelyn's eyes and she saw something in them that cut through her terror. A question. "Do you trust me?" She didn't. She didn't know him. He was a maintenance worker who'd somehow fought like a soldier, But he was also bleeding and outnumbered, and this was impossible. All of it was impossible. Move, the tall man commanded. Evelyn took a step forward. Daniel's body language shifted infinitesimally. His weight redistributed. His eyes tracked the positions of the remaining gunmen with the same careful attention he'd given the restaurant before the chaos began. "Ms. Cross," he said quietly, and his voice cut through the panic. "Stay behind me." The tall man laughed. "The janitor wants to play hero. How touching." He raised his gun, aiming at Daniel's head. "Let me explain how this works. You die. She comes with us. Everyone else maybe lives if they're—" Daniel moved again. Later, Evelyn would try to explain what happened next, and she would fail. There were no words for the speed, the precision, the terrible beauty of violence deployed with surgical skill. Daniel crossed the 5 feet between them in less than a second, his good arm striking the tall man's wrist while his body turned, using the gunman's own momentum against him. The weapon discharged into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. The other gunmen were raising their weapons, but Daniel had the tall man now, had him between himself and the guns, was moving backward toward Evelyn, with the tall man held in front of him like a shield. "Everyone stay back," Daniel said, and there was something in his voice now, command, absolute authority. This was not a request. "Put the weapons down. This doesn't have to get worse." "Shoot him," the tall man choked out, struggling in Daniel's grip. "Shoot." "They won't," Daniel said calmly. "Because if they do, you die first, and then they lose their leverage." His eyes were on the other gunman, tracking every micro-movement. "You planned this carefully, weeks, probably. Studied her routines, bribed the staff. You're not going to throw that away by turning this into a massacre." One of the gunmen, younger, nervous, kept his weapon up, but his finger moved off the trigger. "Let him go." "Can't do that." Daniel was still moving backward, still keeping the tall man between himself and the guns, and Evelyn realized with a shock that he was herding her toward the kitchen entrance. "But here's what I can do. I can let you all walk out of here. No pursuit, no heroics. You disappear, we forget what you look like. Everyone lives to make better life choices." "You're one man," the tall man hissed. "Bleeding. You think—" "I think I've already disabled 3 of your people, and I'm still standing." Daniel's voice remained eerily calm. "I think the police are 2 minutes out. Someone hit a silent alarm before you locked the doors. I think your window for clean extraction just closed. So you can take the exit I'm offering, or you can bet your life that you're faster than I am." He paused. "I don't recommend that bet." Sirens. Faint, but growing louder. The gunman heard them too. The nervous one lowered his weapon slightly. "Boss, Shut up!" The tall man was fighting now, really fighting, but Daniel's grip didn't waver. Blood from his shoulder wound was soaking his jacket, dripping onto the floor, but his hands were rock steady. "Decision time," Daniel said quietly. "In 60 seconds, this building is surrounded. You can spend the next decade in prison, or you can walk out that back entrance," he nodded toward the kitchen, "and disappear into a city of 8 million people. Your call." The young gunman looked at his companions. Something passed between them. A decision made without words. They lowered their weapons. "You're making a mistake," the tall man snarled. "Maybe." Daniel's voice carried a weight that silenced the room. "But it's my mistake to make. Go." They went. The gunmen backed toward the kitchen, weapons lowered but not holstered, keeping Daniel in sight until the last possible moment. The tall man in Daniel's grip was still struggling, still spitting threats, but Daniel held him until the last gunman disappeared through the kitchen door. Then, with a movement too quick to follow, Daniel struck a point on the tall man's neck and lowered his suddenly limp body to the floor. "He'll wake up in about 3 minutes," Daniel said, and only then did Evelyn hear the exhaustion in his voice. "Probably with a headache, but no permanent damage." He turned to look at her, and his face was pale under the restaurant lighting. "Are you hurt?" Evelyn opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Her entire world had just been rewritten. The rules she'd thought governed reality, the assumptions she'd made about safety and power and who held it, all of it shattered like the water glasses scattered across the floor. Daniel swayed slightly. The blood from his shoulder had soaked through his jacket, was dripping steadily now. "Evelyn, are you hurt?" You, her voice cracked. You got shot. I've had worse. He was still scanning the room, still tracking threats even as he bled. The police will be here soon. They'll have questions. Don't mention the men who left. Tell them there was one shooter, that he fled. Can you do that? Why, because those men were professionals, well-trained, well-equipped. This wasn't random. They knew your name, your schedule, your vulnerabilities. Daniel's eyes were dark, unreadable. Someone sent them. Someone with resources. And if we catch these 5, whoever sent them will just send 5 more. Better to let them report back that Evelyn Cross has unexpected protection. Better to make the next team think twice. Evelyn's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the floor, her designer dress pooling around her, and stared up at the maintenance worker who'd just saved her life with skills that no maintenance worker should possess. "Who are you?" she whispered. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. The sirens were very close now, and voices were shouting outside, police arriving like cavalry that was already too late. Something passed across his face. Regret, maybe. Or just exhaustion. "I'm exactly who I said I was," he said quietly. "A single father who works maintenance at St. Catherine's Hospital. That's the truth, Evelyn. Everything else is just—" He paused, searching for words. "It's just training I don't use anymore." The front door burst open. Police flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Daniel raised his good hand slowly, showing he was unarmed, and Evelyn watched as they surrounded him, pushing him to the ground even as blood pooled beneath his shoulder. "Don't hurt him!" She was on her feet again somehow, her voice cutting through the chaos. "He saved my life! He's not the threat!" But the police weren't listening, were already cuffing Daniel, checking him for weapons. One of them found a small knife in his boot, a tool, probably, for his maintenance work, and held it up like evidence of guilt. Evelyn pushed forward. "I am Evelyn Cross. I own this city's 3rd largest employer, and that man just saved my life. So unless you want to spend the next year explaining to my legal team why you treated a hero like a criminal, I suggest you get him medical attention immediately." Her voice, the voice that commanded boardrooms and cowed competitors, cut through the confusion. A senior officer turned, recognizing her, and suddenly the dynamic shifted. Daniel was uncuffed, paramedics were called, and Evelyn found herself giving a statement to a detective while watching EMTs treat Daniel's shoulder wound with efficiency that suggested this wasn't the first bullet he'd taken. "The shooter fled through the kitchen," she heard herself say, repeating Daniel's script without fully understanding why. "Only one. I didn't get a good look at him." The lies came easily. She'd spent her career spinning narratives, controlling information flow. This was just another negotiation, another careful management of truth. But when the detective moved away to coordinate with his team, and Evelyn was finally left alone for a moment in the ruins of the cafe, she felt something crack inside her chest. The armor she'd worn for so long, the certainty, the superiority, the absolute conviction that she was smarter, better, more valuable than people like Daniel Reed, all of it had been stripped away in 20 minutes of violence. She'd told him he was beneath her. She'd mocked his job, his clothes, his life. She'd measured his worth against her billions and found him lacking. And then he'd taken a bullet meant for her without a second's hesitation. Across the restaurant, Daniel was being loaded onto a stretcher. His eyes found hers one more time, and in them Evelyn saw no triumph, no expectation of gratitude, just a kind of weary sadness, as if he'd seen this movie before and knew exactly how it ended. The paramedics wheeled him out. The police continued their investigation, and Evelyn Cross stood alone in the wreckage of Rousseau's, surrounded by overturned tables and broken glass, with the taste of shame sharp in her mouth, and the terrible knowledge that she'd gotten everything wrong. The maintenance worker she'd tried to destroy in the first 20 minutes had proven to be the only thing standing between her and death. And somewhere in that reversal, in the violence and the blood and the impossible calm of Daniel Reed's voice telling her to stay behind him, Evelyn had felt something she hadn't experienced in over a decade. Fear. Not of the gunman, fear of what she'd become. Fear of the cruelty she'd deployed so casually. Fear that the person she'd built herself into, hard, ruthless, measuring every human being against her own inflated worth, was exactly the kind of person who deserved to end up alone in a ruined cafe, saved by someone she'd been too blind to see. Her phone buzzed. Jennifer. Oh my God, I'm seeing the news. Are you okay? Is Daniel okay? Evelyn looked at the message for a long time. Then she typed a reply. He's hurt. It's my fault. All of it. She sent it before she could reconsider. Outside, the rain had stopped and Manhattan was washing itself clean in the late afternoon light. Inside, Evelyn Cross sat down amid the wreckage and let herself shake. The hospital corridor smelled like antiseptic and old coffee, and Evelyn had been pacing it for 2 hours. She'd followed the ambulance in her town car, ignoring her driver's protests and her phone's incessant buzzing with calls from her executive team. None of that mattered. What mattered was the operating room door at the end of the hall, and the man behind it who'd taken a bullet because she'd been too arrogant to notice the danger gathering around her. A nurse emerged, stripping off latex gloves. Evelyn intercepted her before she'd taken 3 steps. Daniel Reed, the gunshot victim, how is he? The nurse's expression was professionally neutral. Are you family? Evelyn paused, the lie catching in her throat. I'm the reason he got shot. Something flickered in the nurse's eyes. Not judgment, exactly, more like recognition. He's stable. The bullet went through cleanly, missed the major vessels. He'll need physical therapy, but there shouldn't be permanent damage. She paused. He's been asking for his daughter. Do you know how to reach her? Evelyn's stomach dropped. The daughter. Maya. 7 years old, probably waiting at home for a father who was supposed to pick her up hours ago. I don't have his contact information. I barely know him. There should be emergency contacts in his wallet. The nurse gestured toward a waiting area. His belongings are with security. They'll release them to family or... She studied Evelyn's expensive suit, her designer heels, or to whoever he authorizes. It took another 40 minutes of bureaucratic navigation and one very pointed phone call from Evelyn's legal team to the hospital administrator before she was allowed into Daniel's recovery room. He was awake, propped against pillows with his shoulder heavily bandaged, staring at the ceiling with an expression that suggested he was calculating something unpleasant. He turned his head when she entered. You shouldn't be here, E. The words hit harder than they should have. I needed to make sure you were all right. I'm fine. Go home, Evelyn. She closed the door behind her, leaning against it. Your daughter, Maya, she needs to know where you are. Something cracked in Daniel's careful composure. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, Evelyn saw the exhaustion there. Not physical, but the bone-deep weariness of a man carrying too much alone. Her emergency contact is Mrs. Chen, my neighbor. Number should be in my phone. His voice was flat, carefully controlled. Can you call her? Tell her I'm delayed at work. He paused. Don't mention what happened. Maya doesn't need to know about this. Evelyn found his phone in the clear plastic bag with his other belongings. The screen was cracked, probably from the fight, but it still worked. Mrs. Chen answered on the 3rd ring, her voice warm and faintly accented. Daniel? Is everything okay? Mrs. Chen, this is Evelyn Cross. What was she? Not a friend. Barely an acquaintance. I'm with Daniel at St. Catherine's. He's fine, but he's been delayed at work. He asked me to let you know he'll be late picking up Maya. There was a pause. St. Catherine's. That's the hospital where he works. Yes. And he's fine, but delayed. Mrs. Chen's tone suggested she was translating the careful words into their actual meaning. How delayed? Evelyn looked at Daniel, who was watching her with dark, unreadable eyes. Overnight, probably. Maybe tomorrow. Another pause. I'll keep Maya here. Tell Daniel not to worry. And Ms. Cross? Make sure he actually rests. That man would work through a broken leg if you let him. The call ended. Evelyn set the phone down on the bedside table and finally allowed herself to really look at Daniel. Without the jacket and work clothes, bandaged and hospital pale, he looked younger than she'd thought. Early 30s, maybe. Too young to move like a soldier. Too young to take bullets with that kind of calm. Thank you, he said quietly, for calling her. You didn't have to do that. I didn't have to do a lot of things. Evelyn pulled the visitor's chair closer to the bed. I didn't have to insult you for 20 minutes. I didn't have to treat you like you were worthless. I didn't have to assume that because you work maintenance, You couldn't possibly be worth my time. Daniel's jaw tightened. Evelyn, let me finish. She was surprised by the force in her own voice. You saved my life today. You took a bullet for a woman who spent the entire date tearing you apart, and I need to understand why. I need to understand who you are, because nothing about this makes sense. I'm a maintenance worker at St. Catherine's. Maintenance workers don't fight like that. They don't read rooms for threats. They don't... She gestured at his shoulder. They don't get shot protecting billionaires who've been nothing but cruel to them. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Outside the room, hospital sounds filtered through. Intercoms paging doctors, the squeak of gurneys, the low murmur of voices discussing life and death in clinical terms. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, each word selected with precision. I used to be someone else. Before Maya. Before my wife died. I did work that... He paused. Work that required certain skills. When Sarah got sick, when Maya was born, I walked away from that life. Completely. I wanted to be present for them, not deployed somewhere counting days until I could come home. His eyes met hers. After Sarah died, I could have gone back. People asked me to. But I'd made a promise to her and to Maya that I'd be the kind of father who shows up, who's there for soccer games and homework and bedtime stories. You can't do that and also be the person I used to be. Evelyn's mind was racing, filling in the gaps he'd left. You were military. Something like that. Special operations. Daniel didn't answer, which was answer enough. And you gave it all up to unclog hospital toilets. She didn't mean it cruelly this time. She was genuinely trying to understand. I gave it up to be Maya's father. The correction was gentle but absolute. The maintenance work pays enough, gives me stable hours, lets me be home for dinner every night. That's worth more than... He gestured vaguely at himself. More than any of the rest of it. Evelyn thought about her own life. The 80-hour weeks, the midnight conference calls with Singapore, the meals eaten at her desk while reviewing contracts, the careful architecture of success that left no room for anything as messy as actual human connection. I don't have dinner with anyone, she said quietly. I eat alone most nights, working. That's your choice. Is it? She surprised herself with the question. I built my company from nothing, Daniel. I started in a studio apartment with a laptop and a business plan. Every dollar, every employee, every line of code. I fought for it. And somewhere along the way, I decided that the fight was everything, that anything else was weakness. Including kindness. The words were soft, but they cut deep. Evelyn flinched. I'm not a kind person. No, Daniel agreed. You're not. But you could be. You don't know that. I know you followed the ambulance here. I know you called Mrs. Chen. I know you're sitting in a hospital room at... He glanced at the clock. 8 at night, talking to a man you could have just sent flowers and forgotten about. His eyes were steady on hers. So maybe you're not kind yet, but you're capable of it, if you choose to be. Evelyn felt something hot and uncomfortable building behind her eyes. She hadn't cried in years. Crying was weakness, and weakness was death in the world she inhabited. But sitting in this sterile room with a man who'd bled for her, who was looking at her now with something that wasn't quite forgiveness, but might someday become it. I was terrible to you, she whispered. Before. At the cafe. Everything I said was true. Daniel's voice was matter-of-fact. I do fix boilers. I am a single father. I don't move in your world. Nothing you said was factually incorrect. But the way I said it was designed to hurt. He nodded. Yeah, it was. And it did. The admission broke something in Evelyn's chest. I'm sorry, I don't know how to be different. I've been this person for so long. Then be someone else. Daniel shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. You rebuilt yourself once already. Poor kid from Philadelphia to tech billionaire. If you could do that, you can rebuild again. Into someone who doesn't measure human worth by bank accounts. I don't know how. Start small. Tomorrow, when you go to work, learn the name of your janitor. The people who clean your office at night. Find out something about them that's not related to their work. Do that for a week. See how it feels. It sounded impossibly simple and terrifyingly hard. And if I can't, if I'm too far gone, you're not. Daniel's certainty was absolute. If you were, you wouldn't be here. You would have sent your assistant with a fruit basket and a liability waiver and moved on with your life. But you're here, asking questions. That's something. A nurse knocked and entered without waiting for response. Mr. Reed, we need to check your vitals, and visiting hours ended 20 minutes ago. Evelyn stood, suddenly reluctant to leave. I'll come back tomorrow. If you want me to. Daniel studied her for a moment. Bring Maya. If you're going to be around, she should meet you. She's good at reading people. Better than I am, honestly. The idea of meeting a 7-year-old terrified Evelyn more than any boardroom negotiation ever had. What if she doesn't like me? Then you'll have to earn it. There was the faintest hint of amusement in Daniel's voice. Fair warning, she's tougher than most of my old commanding officers. Evelyn left the hospital as full dark settled over Manhattan. Her driver had been waiting for hours, and he opened the car door without comment on her disheveled appearance or the fact that she'd spent the entire evening in a hospital room instead of managing the crisis her company was undoubtedly facing. Her phone had 47 missed calls. Evelyn ignored them all and dialed Jennifer instead. Oh, thank God, her assistant answered. Are you okay? I've been losing my mind. The board wants a statement. The PR team is having a meltdown, and Marcus keeps calling about Singapore. Tell the board I'll address them tomorrow. Tell PR to draft something about increased security measures. Tell Marcus I don't care about Singapore right now. Evelyn watched the city slide past her window. And Jennifer, why did you set me up with Daniel Reed? Silence on the line. Then, carefully, because you needed someone real. Someone who wouldn't be impressed by your money or intimidated by your reputation. Someone who'd see you, not your portfolio. You could have warned me he was... Evelyn paused. What could she say? A former special operator? A man capable of extreme violence deployed with surgical precision? Not what I expected. If I'd warned you, you would have refused to go. Jennifer's voice softened. Is he okay? I heard he was hurt. He'll recover. Jennifer, what do you know about him? Really know? Not much. He transferred to St. Catherine's about 3 years ago. Works maintenance, keeps to himself mostly. But the nurses love him. He's always fixing things after hours, so patients don't have to wait. And his daughter visits sometimes. Sweetest kid you've ever seen. A pause. Why? Because he took a bullet for me, Evelyn thought. Because he called me cruel and was right. Because he thinks I can be better, and I desperately want to believe him. No reason, she said instead. I'll be in tomorrow morning. Clear my schedule for the afternoon. I have somewhere to be. She ended the call before Jennifer could ask questions. The car pulled up to her building, a glass tower in Tribeca, all clean lines and expensive views. Evelyn's penthouse occupied the entire top floor, 3,000 square feet of carefully curated space that had been featured in Architectural Digest twice. It was beautiful and empty, and tonight it felt like a mausoleum. She poured herself scotch, 30-year-old single malt that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the city she'd conquered. Somewhere out there, Daniel Reed was sleeping in a hospital bed with a bullet wound he'd taken for her, and his daughter was waiting at a neighbor's house, not knowing her father had almost died today. Evelyn raised her glass to her reflection. To being someone else, she murmured and drank. The scotch burned going down, but not as much as the shame. The next morning, Evelyn did something she hadn't done in 5 years. She arrived at Cross Industries at 9 instead of 7. Her executive team looked shocked when she walked into the boardroom at a reasonable hour, dressed in a simple black suit instead of her usual armor of designer power clothes. Marcus stood immediately. Evelyn, thank God. We need to discuss security protocols. What happened yesterday was completely unacceptable. Sit down, Marcus. Evelyn took her seat at the head of the table. We'll address security. But first, I want everyone here to understand something. Yesterday, a man was shot protecting me. A maintenance worker from St. Catherine's Hospital. His name is Daniel Reed, and most of you have never heard of him because he's not important enough to register on your radar. She let that sink in. He saved my life, and I'd treated him like garbage 20 minutes before he did it. Uncomfortable silence around the table. These were people who'd learned to be ruthless by watching Evelyn. They were sharks she'd trained, and now she was telling them the water had changed. So here's what's going to happen. First, we're establishing a fund for Mr. Reed's medical expenses and lost wages. $1 million. She held up a hand as Marcus started to protest. Non-negotiable. Second, I want a complete review of how we treat support staff in this company. Cleaning crews, maintenance, security. I want to know their names, their situations, what we can do better. Third, she paused. Third, we're implementing mandatory breaks for all executive staff. No more 100-hour weeks, no more eating at desks. We're going to remember we're human beings, not profit algorithms. Someone coughed, probably choking on the cognitive dissonance. Jennifer, sitting in the corner taking notes, was smiling. You all think I've lost my mind, Evelyn continued. You're wondering if I hit my head yesterday. I didn't. But I did get a very thorough education in what actually matters, so we're going to make some changes. And if any of you have a problem with that, there's the door. Nobody moved. Good. Marcus, security report. Make it brief. The meeting continued, but something had shifted. Her team kept glancing at her like she was a stranger wearing their CEO's face. Maybe she was. Maybe the Evelyn Cross who'd walked into that cafe yesterday had died there. And whoever was sitting in this chair now was still figuring out who she was going to become. At noon, Evelyn excused herself and drove to St. Catherine's. She'd called ahead, and Mrs. Chen had agreed to bring Maya to meet her father. Evelyn found them in Daniel's room, the little girl sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, chattering about something that had happened at school while Daniel listened with the kind of complete attention Evelyn gave to quarterly earnings reports. Maya saw her first. She stopped mid-sentence, dark eyes assessing Evelyn with unnerving directness. She had her father's features, softened by childhood, and the same quality of stillness. You're the lady from the restaurant, Maya said. Not a question. Evelyn froze. How did you... Mrs. Chen showed me the news on her phone. They said you were there when Dad got hurt. Maya's voice was steady, but her hand had found Daniel's uninjured one and was holding tight. Did you help him? The question was so sincere, so devoid of accusation, that Evelyn felt shame wash over her again. No, honey, your dad helped me. He was very brave. Dad's always brave. Maya stated it as simple fact. Are you nice? Daniel made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Maya, that's not... Mrs. Chen says you should only spend time with nice people, so I'm asking if she's nice. Maya turned those dark eyes back to Evelyn, waiting. Evelyn knelt down so she was at eye level with the girl. I'm trying to be. I wasn't very nice to your dad when we first met, but I'm going to work on that. If he'll let me. Maya considered this with the seriousness of a judge weighing evidence. Then, apparently reaching a verdict, she nodded. Okay, you can stay, but if you're mean to my dad again, I'll be mad at you. That's fair, Evelyn said, and meant it. The afternoon dissolved into something Evelyn had never experienced, just sitting, talking about nothing important. Maya told stories about school, about her friend Emma who had a pet hamster, about the book she was reading where a girl found a dragon egg in her backyard. Daniel listened and smiled and occasionally corrected details, and Evelyn found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Around 3, Maya yawned hugely. I'm tired. Can I take a nap here? Daniel stroked her hair. Hospital beds aren't very comfortable, sweetheart. Don't care. Want to stay with you. There was a small couch against the wall. Daniel nodded toward it, and Maya curled up there like a cat, asleep within minutes. The kind of instant sleep only children could achieve, born from absolute trust that the adults would keep them safe. Evelyn and Daniel sat in silence for a while, watching her breathe. Finally, Evelyn spoke. She's extraordinary. She's everything. Daniel's voice was soft. After Sarah died, I didn't know how to keep going. Maya was 3. She barely understood what had happened, and I had to explain to her that her mother wasn't coming home and also figure out how to be enough parent for both of us. He paused. The first year was hell. I didn't sleep. Barely ate. Just tried to hold it together long enough to get her through each day. And then one morning she brought me breakfast in bed. Burned toast and orange juice in a sippy cup. She was 4 and she said, "Don't be sad, Daddy. I'm taking care of you now." Evelyn felt something break in her chest. That's Daniel? That's when I knew I had to actually live. Not just survive. Because she needed to see how to be a whole person, not a ghost going through motions. He looked at Evelyn. So I chose maintenance work. Regular hours, stable environment, no deployments, no missions, no violence unless someone was actively trying to hurt my daughter. And for 3 years it worked. I was healing. She was thriving. We were building a life. Until yesterday. Daniel's expression hardened slightly. Those men didn't find you by accident, Evelyn. They knew where you'd be when you'd be there. They had inside information. Evelyn had been trying not to think about that. You think someone in my company... I think you should be very careful who you trust. And I think you should hire better security than whatever you have now, because they failed spectacularly. He met her eyes. I won't always be there to stop bullets. The words hung between them. Evelyn realized, with a shock of clarity, that she wanted him to be there, not as a bodyguard, just there, present. The way he was present for Maya, with that complete attention that made you feel like you mattered. I don't want you to stop bullets, she said quietly. I want... She stopped, uncertain how to finish the sentence. What do you want, Evelyn? To be different, she thought. To be someone worth saving. To understand how you look at your daughter like she's the entire universe and still have room to show kindness to a stranger who's been nothing but terrible to you. I want to do better, she said finally. I want to be someone Maya wouldn't be mad at for being mean to her dad. Daniel smiled, and it transformed his face. That's a good start. Maya stirred on the couch, mumbling something about dragons in her sleep, and Evelyn felt a fierce protectiveness she'd never experienced before. This child, this small person who'd assessed her with such direct honesty, deserved a world that wouldn't hurt her the way Evelyn's world had been built to hurt people. I need to tell you something, Evelyn said, keeping her voice low so as not to wake Maya, about why I am the way I am. Not as an excuse, just so you understand. Daniel waited, patient as stone. I grew up in North Philadelphia, Kensington area. My father was an alcoholic who couldn't hold a job. My mother worked herself into an early grave trying to keep us fed. I shared a bedroom with 2 sisters in a house where the heat didn't work half the winter. The words came faster now, rushing out like water through a broken dam. I was smart. Everyone said so. But smart doesn't mean anything when you're wearing the same 3 outfits to school and the other kids notice. When your lunch is whatever you can steal from the cafeteria because there's nothing at home. When you're doing homework by streetlight because the electricity got shut off again. Evelyn, let me finish, please. She wrapped her arms around herself. I got a scholarship to Penn. Full ride. I thought that would fix everything. But I showed up to orientation and everyone else had the right clothes, the right vocabulary, parents who'd gone to college and knew how to navigate the system. I was so far behind I couldn't see the starting line. So I taught myself to fake it. To dress right, talk right, pretend I belonged. And somewhere in all that pretending, I decided that the only way to never be poor again was to be rich enough that no one could ever look down on me. Daniel's expression was unreadable. So you built an empire. I built armor. The company, the money, the reputation, it's all just armor against ever being that scared kid again. Against ever being dismissed because of where I came from or what I didn't have. She met his eyes. Yesterday, when you walked into that cafe in work clothes smelling like industrial cleaner, I saw my father. I saw everything I'd run from. And I was cruel because I was terrified. Terrified of what? Of being wrong. Of building my entire life on a lie, of the possibility that maybe wealth and power don't actually make you better than anyone else, that maybe the metric I've been using to measure worth is completely broken. Her voice cracked. You took a bullet for me, Daniel, a man I'd spent 20 minutes destroying, and I can't reconcile that with anything I thought I knew about how the world works. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his gaze shifting to his sleeping daughter. After Sarah died, I was angry at everything. At the universe for taking her. At the doctors who couldn't save her. At myself for all the time I'd wasted on deployments instead of being home with her. He paused. Maya was too young to understand grief. She just knew her mother was gone and her father was broken. And one day, maybe 6 months after the funeral, she asked me why I was so sad all the time. She said, "Mommy wouldn't want you to be sad." Evelyn felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back. I realized she was right. Sarah had fought so hard to stay alive, to see Maya grow up. And I was wasting the life I still had being angry at death. So I made a choice, to honor her by actually living, by being present for our daughter, by choosing kindness even when I didn't feel kind, because that's what Sarah would have done. He looked at Evelyn. You had a hard childhood. I'm sorry for that. No kid should grow up scared and hungry, but you're not that kid anymore. You have resources, power, the ability to change things. So the question isn't why you built armor. It's whether you're ready to take it off. What if I don't know how? Then you learn. Same way you learn to run a company. Same way you learn to negotiate with heads of state. You choose to be different, and then you practice until it's not practice anymore. It's just who you are. The simplicity of it was almost offensive. Evelyn had spent years in therapy trying to untangle the knots her childhood had tied in her psyche, and Daniel was suggesting she could just choose to be better. Except he wasn't saying it would be easy. He was saying it would be work, deliberate and difficult, the same way building Cross Industries had been work. I don't have many friends, she said quietly. Actually, I don't have any, just employees and competitors, people who want something from me or want to destroy me. I don't know how to just be around people without an agenda. Start here. Daniel gestured around the hospital room. No agenda. Just sitting with someone who got hurt protecting you. Learning about his kid. Maybe telling the truth instead of managing the narrative. The truth is I'm terrified. The admission came out barely above a whisper. Of all of it. Of whoever sent those men yesterday. Of changing and discovering I don't know who I am without the armor. Of trying to be better and failing. Fear means you're paying attention. Sarah used to say that. She was scared all through her cancer treatment, but she did it anyway. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the thing anyway. Maya stirred again, this time waking. She sat up slowly, blinking sleep from her eyes. I had a dream about a purple dragon. It could talk, but only in riddles. She yawned. Dad, when can you come home? Tomorrow, probably. Maybe the day after. Soon, honey. Can Evelyn come visit when you're home? Mrs. Chen makes really good dumplings, and there's always extra. Daniel's eyebrows rose slightly. Evelyn felt something warm and terrifying expanding in her chest. I wouldn't want to impose, she started. It's not imposing if I'm inviting you. Maya spoke with absolute conviction. Mrs. Chen says community is important, that we should know our neighbors and share food. You're Dad's friend now, right? So you should come. Evelyn looked at Daniel, who was clearly fighting a smile. Am I your friend? Apparently my 7-year-old thinks so. I've learned not to argue with her. She's usually right about people. Then I'd love to come to dinner. Evelyn directed this to Maya. If you're sure. I'm sure. Can you come this Saturday? Dad should be better by then. I can show you my room and my books and my dragon drawings. It's a date. The words came out before Evelyn could stop them, and she felt her face heat. I mean, not a date, just Saturday, dinner, with dumplings. Daniel was definitely smiling now. Smooth. Shut up. I run a billion-dollar company. I can handle a dinner invitation from a 7-year-old. Can you? His eyes were amused. Maya, why don't you tell Evelyn about your dragon book? For the next hour, Evelyn listened to an enthusiastic breakdown of a middle-grade fantasy series she'd never heard of. Maya was an animated storyteller, complete with hand gestures and different voices for different characters. Daniel interjected occasionally with questions that showed he'd actually read the books too, that he paid attention to what mattered to his daughter. Evelyn thought about her own father, who'd never read her anything, who'd been too drunk or too angry or too absent to notice when she won academic awards or got into Penn. The contrast was stark and painful. Around 5, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, a small Chinese woman with kind eyes and flower on her sleeves. Maya, time to go. Your father needs rest, and I need help making dinner. But I'm not done telling Evelyn about the ice castle. You can tell her on Saturday. Come on, little one. Maya hugged Daniel carefully, avoiding his injured shoulder. Then, to Evelyn's surprise, she hugged her too, quick and fierce, the way children hug when they mean it. See you Saturday. Don't forget. I won't forget. Evelyn's voice was rough. Mrs. Chen shepherded Maya out, but paused at the door. Mr. Reed, make sure you actually rest. And Miss Cross? He's too stubborn to ask for help, but he needs it. Don't let him overdo things when he gets home. Before Evelyn could respond, they were gone. She looked at Daniel. I think I just got assigned as your keeper. Mrs. Chen is a force of nature. There's no point arguing. He shifted in the bed, wincing. You really don't have to come Saturday. Maya gets enthusiastic about people she likes, but I know you're busy. I want to come. Evelyn surprised herself with how much she meant it. Unless you don't want me there, which would be completely understandable given everything. I wouldn't have let Maya invite you if I didn't want you there. Daniel's tone was matter-of-fact. But I need you to understand something. My life isn't glamorous. It's a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, furniture from IKEA, and a 7-year-old who thinks mac and cheese is a food group. If you come, you're seeing how actual people live. Not boardrooms and penthouses. Just life. Normal, mundane, not particularly exciting life. That sounds perfect. And it did. Evelyn couldn't remember the last time she'd experienced anything normal or mundane. Her existence was a carefully orchestrated performance of success, and she was so tired of performing. Okay then, Daniel smiled. Fair warning. Maya will absolutely try to teach you to play whatever game she's currently obsessed with. Right now it's... Sorry. She's ruthless about sending people back to start. I think I can handle a board game. We'll see. His smile widened. She's beaten every adult who's tried to play her in the last 6 months, including 2 of my former teammates who are trained in strategic thinking. Your former teammates visit? Daniel's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. Sometimes, not often, they don't really understand the civilian life choice. Think I'm wasting my skills changing light bulbs and fixing HVAC systems. Are you? The question hung between them. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. Every skill I have, I learned to hurt people efficiently, to neutralize threats, to operate in hostile territory. Those skills saved your life yesterday, so maybe there's value in keeping them sharp. But most days? He shook his head. Most days I'm grateful I don't need them. That my biggest challenge is explaining to Maya why she can't have ice cream for breakfast, not figuring out how to extract a team from enemy territory. But you miss it sometimes. I miss the clarity, the simplicity of having a mission, a target, a clear definition of success. He met her eyes, but I don't miss the cost. The things I had to do, the person I had to become to do them. And I definitely don't miss being away from home for months at a time, missing birthdays and milestones because I was somewhere I can't talk about doing things I can't discuss. Evelyn thought about her own clarity, the simplicity of measuring success by profit margins and stock prices, the cost of that simplicity and loneliness and isolation. Maybe we're not so different. You traded one kind of mission for another. I'm just realizing I need to do the same. Maybe. Daniel yawned, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Sorry, the pain meds make me drowsy. I should let you rest. Evelyn stood, then hesitated. Daniel, thank you for yesterday, for today, for not hating me even though you'd have every right to. I don't hate you, Evelyn. I think you're scared and lonely and you've built walls so high you can't see over them anymore. But walls can come down, if you want them to. She wanted to say something profound, something that would convey the seismic shift happening inside her. Instead, she just nodded. See you Saturday. With dumplings. See you Saturday. Evelyn left the hospital as the sun set over Queens, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Her phone was buzzing again, Marcus probably, or the PR team, or any of the dozen fires that constantly needed her attention. She ignored all of it and called her driver. Take me to IKEA. There was a pause. Ma'am? You heard me. The IKEA in Brooklyn. Now. The driver, trained not to question billionaire's sudden Swedish furniture urges, changed course. Evelyn spent the drive researching what 7-year-old girls liked. The internet suggested everything from dolls to science kits to art supplies. She had no idea what Maya already had, what she'd like, what would be appropriate for a first visit. She ended up buying a hardcover collection of dragon stories with beautiful illustrations, a stuffed purple dragon that looked like it had stepped out of Maya's dream, and a set of watercolor paints with professional-grade brushes. Probably too much. Definitely too much. But the idea of showing up empty-handed to meet a child who'd hugged her felt wrong. Her penthouse felt even emptier than usual that night. Evelyn stood at the windows with her scotch, looking out at the city, and tried to imagine what Daniel and Maya were doing right now. Probably dinner, something simple and comforting. Maybe homework at the kitchen table. Bath time. Stories before bed. The mundane rhythms of a life built on presence instead of profit. Her phone rang. Not Marcus this time. Jennifer. "I heard you cleared your schedule for Saturday," her assistant said without preamble. "And that you went to IKEA. What's happening?" "I'm having dinner with Daniel and his daughter." Silence. Then, "Are you dating him?" "No. Maybe. I don't know." Evelyn rubbed her eyes. "I'm trying to figure out how to be a person again instead of just a CEO. He seems to know how to do that." "Evelyn," Jennifer's voice was soft, "I've worked for you for 6 years. I've never heard you sound like this." "Like what?" "Hopeful. You sound hopeful." Evelyn considered that. Hopeful. When was the last time she'd felt hope about anything other than quarterly earnings? "The men who attacked yesterday, they knew where I'd be. They knew my schedule, my routines. Daniel thinks it was an inside job." "Do you believe him?" He stopped 4 armed men with his bare hands and took a bullet without flinching. "Yeah, I believe him." Evelyn's grip tightened on her glass. "Jennifer, I need you to do something for me, quietly. Review everyone who had access to my calendar that day. Cross-reference with any unusual financial activity, contacts with outsiders, anything that doesn't fit. You want me to investigate our own people. I want to know who tried to have me kidnapped, and I want to know before they try again." Another pause. "I'll be discreet. But Evelyn, if there's a mole in the company, this could get dangerous. Maybe you should hire security. I am. The best I can find. But that doesn't help if someone inside is feeding information to whoever wants me dead." She took a breath. "Just be careful. And Jennifer, thank you for setting up that date, for seeing something I couldn't. You're welcome. And Evelyn, don't screw this up. He seems like a good man. So does his daughter. Don't hurt them." "I'm trying not to." The call ended. Evelyn finished her scotch and poured another, then decided against it and dumped it down the sink. Tomorrow she had a company to run and a potential traitor to find. But Saturday she had dinner with people who might teach her how to be human again. The next 3 days passed in a blur of meetings and investigations. Jennifer worked her contacts quietly, and by Friday they had a suspect, Marcus. Her COO, the man she'd trusted with her company's operations for 8 years, had taken 3 payments of $50,000 from a shell corporation in the Caymans. The payments had come through the week before the attack. Evelyn sat in her office with the evidence spread across her desk and felt the betrayal like a physical wound. "Why? I paid him well, gave him stock options, promoted him twice." Jennifer shook her head. "The Shell Corp traces back to a holding company that your last merger put out of business, Randall Industries. You remember them? We acquired their key patents and their client base collapsed." Evelyn's mind was racing. "They swore revenge. I thought it was just posturing." "Apparently not. Marcus's brother-in-law worked for Randall, lost everything when they went under, took his own life 6 months ago." The pieces clicked into place with terrible clarity. "And Marcus blamed me. He probably did it for the family, for revenge and the money to help his sister." Jennifer's expression was grim. "What do you want to do?" Evelyn thought about the old version of herself. The one who would have destroyed Marcus publicly, made an example of him, crushed him the way she crushed all threats to her empire. That Evelyn would have shown no mercy. but that Evelyn had also almost gotten herself killed because she was too arrogant to notice danger gathering around her. "Get me a secure line to his sister," she said finally. "I want to talk to her before we do anything else." The conversation that followed was one of the hardest of Evelyn's life. Marcus's sister, Helen, was a widow with 2 young children, still drowning in her husband's medical debt. She'd known nothing about her brother's plan, and when Evelyn explained what Marcus had done, the woman broke down sobbing. "He didn't want revenge on you," Evelyn told Jennifer afterward, feeling sick. "He wanted money to help his sister. The men who paid him lied about what they were planning, told him they just wanted information for a lawsuit." "Do you believe that?" "I believe he's an idiot who made a terrible choice trying to help his family. I believe he's going to prison regardless of his intentions." Evelyn closed her eyes. "And I believe I created this situation by being so ruthless in that merger that I didn't care who got hurt." She turned Marcus over to the FBI that evening, along with all the evidence Jennifer had compiled. Then she established a trust fund for Helen and her children. $2 million, managed by an independent trustee, to cover education and living expenses. It wouldn't bring back Helen's husband or excuse Marcus's betrayal, but it was something. Saturday morning arrived bright and cold, and Evelyn stood in front of her closet having a crisis about what to wear to dinner in Queens. Everything she owned screamed expensive. Designer labels, custom tailoring, pieces that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Finally, she settled on dark jeans, a simple cashmere sweater, and ankle boots. Still probably too nice, but at least not obviously a power suit. The drive to Daniel's apartment building felt longer than any international flight. Evelyn clutched the wrapped presents in her lap and tried to remember how to breathe. She'd negotiated with venture capitalists and foreign ministers without breaking a sweat, but the prospect of dinner with a 7-year-old and her father had her palms slick with nervous perspiration. The building was exactly what Daniel had described: modest, well-maintained, the kind of place where neighbors knew each other's names. Mrs. Chen met her in the lobby, looking her up and down with sharp eyes. "Miss Cross, you came." "I said I would." "Many people say things they don't mean, but you're here, so perhaps you're different." Mrs. Chen started toward the elevator. "3rd floor, apartment 3B. Daniel is cooking, even though I told him to rest. Maybe you can convince him to sit down." The elevator was small and slow. Mrs. Chen studied Evelyn during the ascent. "That man has been alone too long. He thinks Maya is enough, and she is enough for love, but not enough for companionship, not enough for the kind of partnership adults need." "Mrs. Chen, we're not, you will be, or you won't. Time will tell." The elevator dinged. "But if you hurt him or that child, you will answer to me, and I am much scarier than armed men." Evelyn believed her. Daniel opened the door at her knock, looking better than he had in the hospital. Still pale, still moving carefully because of his shoulder, but present in a way hospital beds didn't allow. He wore jeans and a faded Stanford t-shirt that had clearly been washed 100 times. "You found us." He smiled. "Come in. Fair warning, Maya's been cleaning her room for an hour because she wants it to be perfect." The apartment was small but warm, lived in a way Evelyn's penthouse would never be. Photos on the walls, Maya at various ages, a beautiful woman who must have been Sarah, Daniel in military fatigues with his arm around teammates who looked like they could kill you with their pinky fingers. Books everywhere, spilling off shelves and stacked on tables. Children's artwork held to the refrigerator with magnets. It was perfect. "Evelyn's here!" Maya came racing out of the hallway, stopping just short of collision. "You came! I wasn't sure you would. Dad said you would, but sometimes grown-ups say things just to be nice." "I wanted to come." Evelyn held out the presents. "I brought you something. I hope that's okay." Maya's eyes went wide. "For me?" "For you." The wrapping paper didn't survive Maya's enthusiastic attack. Within seconds, she was clutching the purple dragon and the book, squealing with delight. "Dad, look! It's like my dream dragon, and this book has the sequel I wanted but the library didn't have yet." She launched herself at Evelyn, hugging her around the waist. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Over Maya's head, Evelyn met Daniel's eyes. He was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read, but it made her chest feel tight in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "You're welcome, sweetheart." The endearment slipped out naturally, and Maya beamed up at her. Can we paint later, with the watercolors? If your dad says it's okay. Dad always says yes to art. Maya was already heading back to her room with her treasures. I'm going to name him Perseus. That's a dragon name. When she was gone, Daniel shook his head. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Is it too much? He paused. It's thoughtful. Thank you. They stood in the small entryway, suddenly awkward with each other. Finally, Daniel gestured toward the kitchen. I'm making chicken stir-fry. Nothing fancy, but Mrs. Chen's dumplings are the real highlight anyway. Can I get you something to drink? Wine, water, juice box with a character on it? Wine sounds good. The kitchen was tiny compared to Evelyn's chef-grade setup, but something smelled amazing. Daniel moved around the space with easy familiarity, pouring wine, checking rice, stirring vegetables with his good arm while his injured one stayed mostly immobilized. How's the shoulder? Evelyn asked. Sore. Physical therapist says I'll make a full recovery if I actually do the exercises. He shot her a look. Mrs. Chen told me you threatened to oversee my recovery yourself. I did not threaten. I simply stated that if you overdid it, I would be personally responsible for making sure you rested. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. Evelyn accepted the wine glass he handed her. Can I help with anything? You can sit and keep me company, or go paint with Maya. Either way, you're not cooking, you're a guest. I don't really paint or do anything artistic, actually. Then it's a good time to learn. Maya's a patient teacher. Daniel smiled. And you might be surprised what you can do when you stop worrying about being perfect at it. The words hit deeper than he probably intended. Evelyn set down her wine glass. Okay, where's the art station? Maya's room was an explosion of color and imagination. Drawings covered every surface, most featuring dragons in various poses and situations. There was a small desk under the window where Maya was already setting up the watercolor paints with the seriousness of a surgeon preparing for operation. We're going to paint dragons, she announced. I'll show you how. First, you need to get the paper wet. Not too wet, or the colors get muddy. Just a little bit, see? For the next hour, Evelyn learned to paint. Or tried to. Her dragons looked more like malformed lizards, but Maya praised every attempt with genuine enthusiasm. They painted side by side, and Maya talked about everything and nothing. Her favorite books, her friend Emma's birthday party next week, how she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up so she could help animals. Dad says I can do anything I want if I work hard enough, Maya said, adding purple scales to her latest creation. Is that true? Evelyn thought about her own journey, poor kid from Philadelphia to billionaire CEO, about the work and sacrifice and sheer bloody-minded determination it had taken. I think you can do amazing things if you work hard, but I also think you need people who believe in you. Your dad believes in you. That's powerful. Do you have people who believe in you? The question stopped Evelyn cold. Did she? She had employees who feared her, competitors who respected her ruthlessness, a board that trusted her to generate profits, but people who genuinely believed in her as a person, not just as a financial instrument? I'm working on that, she said finally. You can add Dad and me, Maya said matter-of-factly. We believe in you. You're trying to be nicer, and that's hard. But you're doing it anyway. That's brave. Out of the mouths of children, Evelyn thought. This 7-year-old had just articulated something her therapist had spent years trying to get her to understand. Thank you, Maya. That means a lot. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Mrs. Chen arrived with a massive container of dumplings, stayed for a glass of wine, and told stories about Daniel that made him blush and Maya giggle. They ate at a small table crowded with mismatched chairs, passing plates family style, and Evelyn couldn't remember the last time she'd enjoyed a meal more. After dinner, Maya insisted on teaching Evelyn to play Sorry. The child was as ruthless as promised, sending Evelyn's pieces back to start with gleeful efficiency. Daniel watched from the couch, his smile soft, and Evelyn felt something settle in her chest, something that felt dangerously like belonging. At 8:30, Maya started yawning. Time for bed, sweetheart, Daniel said. But Evelyn just learned the rules, and she can play again another time. Go brush your teeth. Maya hugged Evelyn goodnight, making her promise to come back soon, then disappeared into the bathroom. Daniel followed to supervise, and Evelyn heard them through the wall. The sound of running water, Maya's chatter about her day, Daniel's low responses, the mundane music of family. When he returned, they sat on the couch together, the silence comfortable in a way Evelyn had never experienced with another person. "She likes you," Daniel said finally. "I like her. She's—" Evelyn paused, searching for words. "She's genuine, real, not performing or calculating, just completely herself. Kids are good at that, before the world teaches them to hide." "Is that what we do? Hide?" "Some of us." Daniel's eyes were on hers. "You've been hiding behind money and power so long you forgot what you look like without them. I've been hiding behind being a dad, using Maya as an excuse not to connect with anyone else." The honesty was startling. "So what do we do about it?" "Stop hiding. Try being real with each other. See what happens." Evelyn's heart was pounding. "That's terrifying." "Yeah, it is." Daniel smiled slightly. "But you're brave enough. You completely changed how you run your company in 3 days. Started investigating your own staff. Came to dinner with a stranger and his kid even though it scared you. That's courage, Evelyn. Or stupidity. Sometimes they look the same." He shifted on the couch, wincing slightly as his shoulder protested. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Okay. Are you here because you feel guilty about how you treated me? Because I saved your life and now you think you owe me something?" His voice was gentle but serious. "Because if that's what this is, we should know now. Before Maya gets more attached. Before I—" He stopped himself. "Before you what?" Daniel met her eyes. "Before I start hoping this is real." The vulnerability in that admission cracked something open in Evelyn's carefully constructed walls. "I do feel guilty, and I do think I owe you my life, but that's not why I'm here." She took a breath, choosing honesty over self-protection. "I'm here because for the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. Because your daughter made me paint dragons and taught me that being brave means trying even when you're bad at something. Because you see me, actually see me, not just the reputation and the money, and that's terrifying and wonderful, and I don't know what to do with it." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out with his good hand and took hers. His palm was calloused from years of maintenance work, warm and solid. "We figure it out, together. No expectations, no pressure, just two people trying to be real with each other." "I don't know how to do that." "Neither do I. Not really. But we can learn, if you're willing." Evelyn looked at their joined hands, felt the weight of his trust, the risk he was taking by letting her into his life and his daughter's world, felt her own fear and hope tangling together like the dragons Maya had painted. "I'm willing," she said, and meant it. The following weeks unfolded like learning a language Evelyn had never spoken. She started showing up at Daniel's apartment on Wednesday evenings after work, timing her arrival for when Maya got home from school. At first she came with elaborate gifts, educational toys, expensive art supplies, things that made Daniel raise his eyebrows and Maya squeal with delight. But by the third week, Daniel pulled her aside. "You don't have to buy her affection," he said quietly, his hand on her arm. "She already likes you. Just being here is enough." So Evelyn stopped bringing things and started bringing herself instead. She learned to help with homework, which was humbling because second-grade math word problems were harder than quarterly financial projections. She learned that Maya liked her sandwiches cut diagonally, that she was afraid of thunderstorms but wouldn't admit it, that she talked to her stuffed animals like they were real friends who understood her worries. At work, the changes Evelyn had implemented were causing ripples. Some of her executives pushed back on the mandatory breaks, on the new emphasis on work-life balance, on treating support staff like actual human beings instead of invisible machinery. Evelyn held firm, and when 3 senior managers threatened to quit, she called their bluff. 2 of them stayed. 1 left, and Evelyn replaced him with someone younger, hungrier, and more interested in building a sustainable company culture than just maximizing quarterly returns. Jennifer noticed the transformation and documented it with the precision of a war correspondent. "You smiled at the janitor this morning, actually smiled and asked about his daughter's soccer game. I thought he was going to faint." "His name is Robert. His daughter Emma plays midfield on the same team as Maya." Evelyn didn't look up from her laptop. They're rivals, apparently. Very intense 7-year-old soccer politics happening. You know the janitor's daughter's position on her soccer team. Jennifer sat down across from Evelyn's desk. Who are you, and what have you done with my boss? I'm trying to be better. It's a process. It's working. The staff actually like you now. They're still terrified, but it's a respectful terror instead of pure dread. Jennifer paused. How are things with Daniel? Evelyn felt warmth spread through her chest at his name. Good. Complicated. We're taking it slow because of Maya. She's been through enough loss. We don't want to confuse her or make promises we might not keep. But you want to keep them? It wasn't a question. Evelyn met her assistant's eyes and told the truth. Yes, I want to keep them, but I don't know how. I've never done this before. Never wanted to. Then you learn. Same way you learned everything else. Jennifer stood. For what it's worth, I think he's good for you. You seem more human these days. Less like a beautiful robot programmed to accumulate wealth. After Jennifer left, Evelyn sat with those words. More human. It should have felt insulting, but instead it felt like recognition. She'd spent so long building armor that she'd forgotten there was supposed to be a person underneath it. Daniel and Maya were teaching her to remember. That Saturday, Daniel invited her to Maya's soccer game. Evelyn arrived at the field in Queens feeling absurdly overdressed, even in jeans and a sweater. The other parents were in yoga pants and team sweatshirts, clutching travel mugs of coffee and folding chairs. They looked at her with curious eyes, clearly trying to place the stranger who'd arrived in a town car. Daniel was setting up chairs on the sideline, moving carefully because his shoulder still wasn't at full strength. He waved when he saw her, and the smile on his face made the awkward stares worth it. You came. I said I would. Evelyn accepted the chair he offered. Although I should warn you, I know nothing about soccer. I might ask stupid questions. There are no stupid questions. Except maybe, why do 7-year-olds take this so seriously? Because I've been asking myself that for 2 years and still don't have an answer. Maya spotted them from where she was warming up with her team and waved enthusiastically. Evelyn waved back, feeling a swell of affection so strong it was almost painful. When had this child become so important to her? When had the idea of disappointing her become more terrifying than losing a major client? The game was chaos. Small children chasing a ball with more enthusiasm than coordination, parents shouting encouragement that bordered on coaching, a referee who looked like he was questioning his life choices. Maya played with fierce determination, her small body throwing itself at the ball with complete commitment. When she scored a goal, admittedly somewhat by accident when the ball bounced off her shin and into the net, Daniel was on his feet cheering, and Evelyn found herself standing too, clapping and whooping like she'd just won a major contract negotiation. Maya's face when she looked over at them was pure joy. After the game, which Maya's team won 3-2, they went for ice cream. Maya recounted every play in exhaustive detail, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. Evelyn listened and asked questions, and Daniel watched them both with an expression that made her heart skip. I'm glad you came, he said later, after Maya had run off to play on the small playground near the ice cream shop. She was so excited when I told her you might be there. I was excited too. Evelyn watched Maya climb the jungle gym with the fearlessness of children who haven't learned to be afraid of falling. I've never been to a kid's soccer game before, never really thought about what I was missing. And now? Now I'm thinking about all the years I spent measuring success by stock prices and market share. All the time I could have spent, she paused, uncertain how to finish. Doing what? She'd never wanted children, never prioritized relationships. The life she'd built had been exactly what she'd chosen. But watching Maya laugh as she slid down the slide, watching Daniel track his daughter's movements with paternal vigilance, Evelyn felt the ghost of something she'd never allowed herself to want. You're thinking too hard. Daniel's voice was gentle. I can practically hear the gears turning. I'm trying to figure out if I'm doing this right. If I'm... She gestured vaguely. If I'm enough for this, for her, for you. Daniel turned to face her fully. Evelyn, you showed up to a children's soccer game in Queens on a Saturday morning when you could have been doing literally anything else. You cheered when Maya scored. You asked her questions about plays you didn't understand because you knew it mattered to her. You're already enough. What if I mess this up? What if I... The fear was choking her. What if I'm too broken to learn how to be normal? First of all, normal is overrated. Second, you're not broken. You're just used to operating in a specific mode, and you're learning a new one. He reached for her hand. And third, I'm pretty sure we're all just making this up as we go along. Every parent, every partner, every person trying to connect with another person. There's no manual. You just show up and try your best and hope it's enough. Maya ran over, breathless and grass-stained. Can Evelyn come to dinner tomorrow? Mrs. Chen is teaching me to make dumplings and I want to show her. Daniel looked at Evelyn. We don't want to monopolize all your weekends. Yes, Evelyn said immediately. I'd love to come. Sunday dinner became a ritual, then Wednesday evenings. Then Daniel started texting her during the day. Nothing profound, just small moments he thought she'd appreciate. A photo of Maya's latest dragon drawing. A funny thing a patient said at the hospital. A question about whether Evelyn had eaten lunch because apparently he'd noticed she had a tendency to work through meals. Evelyn found herself responding, sending her own updates. Board meetings that went well. Small victories with difficult executives. Photos of her office view when the sunset was particularly beautiful. It was domestic and ordinary and completely unlike anything she'd experienced before, and she was falling into it like falling into water. 6 weeks after the cafe attack, Daniel was cleared for full duty at the hospital. Evelyn met him for lunch in the cafeteria, which was a far cry from the restaurant she usually frequented. They sat at a plastic table with trays of surprisingly decent food, and Daniel introduced her to his coworkers, nurses and janitors and cafeteria staff who clearly respected him, who joked with him like he was family. You're popular here, Evelyn observed after they left. I fix things. People appreciate that. Daniel shrugged his newly healed shoulder, testing its range of motion. Plus, I bring decent coffee for the night shift. That buys a lot of goodwill. It's more than that. They care about you. Yeah, well, I care about them too. We're a team. Everyone here is trying to help people, whether that's performing surgery or making sure the floors are clean enough to prevent infections. It all matters. Evelyn thought about her own company, where people competed ruthlessly for promotions and stabbed each other in the back to get ahead, where caring about your coworkers was seen as weakness. I don't think my employees feel that way about each other. Then change it. You're the CEO. Company culture flows from the top. It's not that simple. It absolutely is. Daniel's tone was firm, but not unkind. You decide what behaviors get rewarded and what gets punished. You model what you want to see. You hire and promote people who align with the values you want the company to have. It's work, sure. It takes time, but it's not complicated. Evelyn's phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Emergency. Need you back ASAP. She looked at Daniel apologetically. I have to go. Crisis at work. Go. Handle it. He kissed her forehead, casual and natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. Text me later? Always. The crisis turned out to be a server breach. Someone had attempted to access Cross Industries' proprietary code, and IT had locked down everything as a precaution. Evelyn spent 6 hours with her security team, tracking the intrusion back to an IP address in Eastern Europe. Not random, targeted. They were looking for financial records, her head of security explained. Specifically, anything related to the Randall Industries acquisition. Evelyn felt ice in her veins. They're still coming after me. Looks that way. We stopped this attempt, but whoever's behind it has resources. They'll try again. She thought about Marcus, who'd made one terrible choice and was now awaiting trial. About the men who'd attacked the cafe. About whoever had orchestrated both attempts and was apparently not done yet. Double our security measures. I want encryption on everything, and I want a vulnerability assessment of everyone in my inner circle. Anyone with access to sensitive information gets vetted. That's going to be expensive and invasive. I don't care. Do it. After the security team left, Evelyn sat alone in her office and allowed herself 5 minutes of fear. Someone wanted to destroy her badly enough to keep trying, to invest serious money and resources in taking her down. And the people around her, Daniel, Maya, even her employees, could become collateral damage. She called Daniel. He answered on the second ring, his voice slightly breathless. Hey, everything okay? No, can you talk? Maya's at Mrs. Chen's. I'm just doing some physical therapy exercises. Talk to me. So she did. She told him about the breach, about the continued threat, about her fear that being around her was putting him and Maya in danger. Maybe I should step back, keep my distance until this is resolved. I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't let them hurt you because of me. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and certain. Evelyn, listen to me. I spent 15 years operating in hostile territory. I know how to assess threats and manage risks, and I'm choosing to be in your life anyway. But Maya is protected. I've taken precautions you wouldn't notice. And before you ask, yes, I cleared it with Mrs. Chen and Maya's school. Everyone important knows to be alert. He paused. You're not responsible for other people's choices to hurt you. And you're not getting rid of me because you think it's safer. We're in this together now. You don't get to make that decision alone. The words hit her like a physical force. Together. When was the last time someone had said that to her and meant it? When was the last time she'd let anyone share the weight? I'm scared, she whispered, of them hurting you, of losing this, of being happy and having it destroyed. She didn't say, of finally finding something real and watching it burn. Fear is rational. These people are dangerous, but hiding from danger means hiding from life, and I'm done hiding. You should be too. His voice gentled. Come over. Let me make you dinner. Let Maya tell you about her day. Let yourself be part of something instead of always standing outside looking in. Evelyn closed her eyes. The smart thing would be to pull back to protect them by removing herself from their lives. But Daniel was right. She'd spent so long protecting herself that she'd forgotten how to live. Okay, give me an hour. We'll be here. That night, Evelyn sat at Daniel's small kitchen table and learned to make spaghetti from scratch. Maya was in charge of the sauce, taking her responsibilities with adorable seriousness. Daniel handled the pasta, moving around the tiny kitchen with practiced efficiency. And Evelyn chopped vegetables and set the table and felt like she was finally learning what home meant. After dinner, after Maya was in bed, Daniel and Evelyn sat on the couch with glasses of wine. His arm was around her shoulders, and she was tucked against his side, and everything felt simultaneously new and like it had always been this way. Tell me about Sarah, Evelyn said quietly. If you want to. Daniel's chest rose and fell with a deep breath. She was a nurse. That's how we met. I came in with a training injury, and she was the one who treated it. She took one look at me and said, You're going to be a terrible patient, aren't you? And she was right, I was. He smiled at the memory. She was brilliant, funny, had this way of seeing right through whatever walls I tried to put up. I fought in wars, took down terrorists, did things that would give most people nightmares. And she still wasn't impressed. She said if I wanted to impress her, I should learn to cook and maybe read a book that wasn't a tactical manual. Did you? Eventually, after she agreed to marry me, I learned to cook because she worked night shifts and someone had to make sure she ate. I learned to be present instead of always halfway deployed mentally. And when she got pregnant with Maya, I knew I had to choose. I couldn't be the person I was and also be the father and husband they deserved, so I walked away from that life. Do you regret it? Not for a second. I got 4 years with Sarah and Maya together. They were the best years of my life. And when Sarah got sick, when we knew she wasn't going to make it, she made me promise to keep living, to raise Maya in joy, not grief, to stay open to possibility. He looked down at Evelyn. I think she'd like you. She'd probably give you a hard time about being a workaholic, but she'd like you. Evelyn felt tears threatening. I wish I could have met her. She would have seen through you in about 5 seconds, seen past the armor to the scared kid underneath. And she would have told you, very gently, that you didn't have to be so hard all the time. That strength can be soft. He kissed the top of her head. That's what I'm trying to tell you, too. You can stop fighting long enough to rest. The world won't end. Your company won't collapse. You're allowed to be soft sometimes. I don't know how. Start small. Rest your head on my shoulder. Let yourself be held. Don't check your phone for the next hour. Just be here with me. Present in this moment. It sounded impossibly difficult. Every instinct Evelyn had was screaming at her to check her email, to review tomorrow's schedule, to be productive instead of just existing. But Daniel's arm was warm around her shoulders, and the apartment was quiet except for the distant sounds of the city outside. And for once, Evelyn let herself stop running. She relaxed against him, put her phone face down on the coffee table, closed her eyes, and just breathed. And slowly, incrementally, the knot of tension she'd carried for so long began to loosen. "There you go," Daniel murmured. "You're safe. I've got you." And incredibly, impossibly, Evelyn believed him. The next month passed in a blur of new routines. Evelyn moved some of her schedule around so she could attend Maya's school events. A class play where Maya played a dragon with enthusiastic commitment. A science fair where she'd built a volcano that actually erupted and terrified her teacher. Parent-teacher conferences, where Evelyn sat next to Daniel and felt like part of something larger than herself. At work, the culture shift was gaining momentum. Employee satisfaction surveys showed marked improvement. Turnover was down. And while some of the old guard grumbled about the changes, productivity was actually up because people weren't burning out and quitting every 6 months. Jennifer pulled Evelyn aside one afternoon. "I need to show you something, and you're not going to like it." She pulled up a series of emails between two senior executives discussing ways to undermine the new policies, plans to make the changes look ineffective so the board would pressure Evelyn to reverse course. Subtle sabotage disguised as concerns about profitability. Evelyn read through them, feeling old anger rise up. The old version of herself would have fired both executives immediately, publicly, making examples of them. But she'd learned something from Daniel about strength being soft, about addressing problems without destroying people. "Set up a meeting with both of them," she said finally. "Private, just the three of us. I want to understand what's really driving this." The meeting was tense. The two executives, Richard and Catherine, both longtime employees who'd risen through the ranks during Evelyn's most ruthless period, sat across from her with defensive postures and rehearsed explanations. "I'm not here to fire you," Evelyn said, cutting through their prepared statements. "I'm here to understand. You both helped build this company. You've given years of your lives to Cross Industries. So I need to know, why are you trying to sabotage changes that are actually working?" Silence. Then Richard spoke, his voice tight. "Because we don't recognize this company anymore. We signed up to work for a tech empire, not a commune where everyone gets participation trophies and work-life balance. You taught us that success requires sacrifice, that being ruthless is the only way to survive. And now you're telling us we were wrong?" The accusation hung in the air. Evelyn absorbed it, felt the truth of it. "You weren't wrong. I was. I built this culture. I rewarded the behavior I'm now trying to change, and I'm asking you to adapt to something new without acknowledging that the old rules came from me." Catherine blinked. Are you apologizing?" "I'm acknowledging reality. I taught you to be sharks, and now I'm asking you to be something else, and I haven't given you the tools or support to make that transition." Evelyn leaned forward. "So here's what I'm proposing. We bring in consultants who specialize in organizational culture change. We provide training and support for everyone at the executive level. We establish clear new metrics for success that balance profitability with sustainability. And we do this together, as a team, instead of me dictating changes from the top and expecting you all to just fall in line." Richard and Catherine exchanged glances. "And if we still think this is a mistake," Richard asked, "then we have honest conversations about whether this is still the right fit for you. No hard feelings, generous severance, strong references. But I'm not going back to the old way. I've seen what it costs, and it's too much. So either we move forward together or we part ways professionally. Your choice." The conversation didn't solve everything immediately, but it was a start. Both executives agreed to try the new approach, to work with the consultants, to give the changes a fair chance. And Evelyn left the meeting feeling like she'd handled something the way Daniel would have, with honesty and compassion instead of just wielding power. That night, she told him about it over dinner at his apartment. Maya was doing homework at the table beside them, occasionally interjecting with questions about spelling or math. The domesticity of it all, the homework and the simple meal and the easy conversation filled something in Evelyn that had been hollow for too long. "You did good," Daniel said, his hand covering hers on the table. "That's leadership, real leadership, not just commanding people but bringing them along with you. I learned it from you, from watching how you handle your team at the hospital, how you make people feel valued. We're learning from each other." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "That's how this works. Partnership." The word settled in Evelyn's chest, warm and frightening. Partnership implied permanence, commitment, building something together. It implied that this wasn't just a temporary deviation from her real life, but was becoming her real life. Maya looked up from her homework. "Are you guys going to get married?" Evelyn choked on her water. Daniel coughed. They stared at each other, then at Maya, who was watching them with innocent curiosity. "That's," Daniel started. "Maya, that's not—" "Emma's mom and her boyfriend got married. They had a party with cake. If you guys get married, can I help pick the cake?" Maya returned to her homework like she hadn't just lobbed a grenade into the middle of dinner. Later, after Maya was in bed, Daniel and Evelyn sat on the couch in careful silence. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Sorry about that. She's at the age where she thinks every adult relationship ends in marriage. One of her classmates' parents just got engaged, and it's all the kids talk about." "It's okay." Evelyn's heart was still racing. "Although I should probably mention that I've never really thought about marriage. Never saw myself as the type." "What type is that?" "The type who prioritizes partnership over career, who makes compromises, who—" She gestured vaguely. "Who does this? Any of this?" Daniel studied her. "Are you saying you don't see a future here? Because if that's the case, we should talk about it, before Maya gets more attached, before I—" He stopped himself. "Before you what?" "Before I fall any harder than I already have." The admission was quiet, but absolute. "I'm in love with you, Evelyn. I know it's only been a couple months. I know we're still figuring this out. But I need you to know where I stand. I'm not looking for casual. I'm too old, and Maya's too important for me to introduce people into her life who aren't going to stay." Evelyn felt like the ground had shifted beneath her. He loved her. This man who'd taken a bullet for her, who'd shown her kindness when she'd deserved none, who'd taught her what it meant to be present and soft and real. He loved her. And she loved him too. The realization crashed over her like a wave. She loved him and his daughter and the life they were building together. She loved the person she was becoming when she was with them. She loved the way Maya hugged her, and the way Daniel looked at her like she mattered more than her net worth. "I love you too," she said, and the words felt like jumping off a cliff. "And that terrifies me. Because everyone I've ever loved has left or died or betrayed me. Because I don't know how to do this without screwing it up. Because—" Daniel kissed her, cutting off the spiral of fear. When he pulled back, his eyes were soft. "Love is always terrifying. It means giving someone the power to hurt you and trusting they won't. It means being vulnerable. But Evelyn, you're already doing it. You've been doing it for weeks now. Showing up, being present, letting yourself care. The fear doesn't go away. You just decide it's worth it anyway." "Is it? Worth it?" "Ask me in 50 years. He smiled. "But yeah, I think it is." Evelyn kissed him again, deeper this time, pouring all her fear and hope and desperate want into it. And for once, she didn't think about work or threats or the 100 ways this could fall apart. She just let herself be here, in this moment, with this man who'd somehow seen through her armor to the person underneath and decided she was worth loving anyway. They didn't talk about marriage again that night, but they did talk about the future, carefully, tentatively, mapping out what it might look like. Evelyn mentioned her penthouse was too big for one person. Daniel mentioned Maya had been asking if Evelyn could come to more school events. They danced around the idea of something more permanent without quite saying it out loud, both of them aware of what they were building but afraid to name it too soon. Outside, Manhattan glittered in the darkness, 8 million people living their lives, chasing their dreams, building their own versions of home. And in a small apartment in Queens, Evelyn Cross, self-made billionaire, ruthless CEO, woman who'd measured her worth by her bank account, was learning that the most valuable things couldn't be quantified, that love wasn't weakness, that home wasn't a place but a feeling, that sometimes the worst first impressions led to the best second chances. And for the first time in her adult life, Evelyn felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The threat came on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after the cafe attack. Evelyn was in a board meeting when Jennifer slipped her a note. Security breach. Your apartment. They left something. Evelyn excused herself with the calm she'd perfected over years of high-stakes negotiations, but her hands shook as she dialed her head of security. What did they leave? Photos. Of Daniel Reed and his daughter, at her school, at the park, at your building, dozens of them. His voice was grim. And a note. It says, back off or they disappear. The world tilted. Evelyn gripped the edge of her desk to steady herself. Get them protection. Now. I don't care what it costs. Armed security, surveillance, everything. Already done. But Ms. Cross, we need to talk about what back off means. What are they trying to stop you from doing? Evelyn's mind raced through possibilities. The company culture changes? The investigation into the original attack? Something else entirely? I don't know, but I'm not backing off from anything. Double security on Daniel and Maya. I want someone watching them every second. She called Daniel immediately. He was at work, and she could hear the background noise of the hospital. Evelyn, what's wrong? They know about you and Maya. They left photos in my apartment. Threats. Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. I'm sending security to you right now. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't let Maya out of your sight. There was a pause. When Daniel spoke again, his voice had changed, flatter, harder, the tone of someone assessing tactical situations. How many photos? What kind of surveillance are we talking about? Dozens. From the past few weeks. They've been following you both. Evelyn felt sick. This is my fault. I should have... Stop. This isn't your fault. These people made choices. You're not responsible for their actions. She heard him moving, probably finding somewhere private to talk. Listen to me carefully. I'm going to pick up Maya early from school. We're going to Mrs. Chen's, and we're going to stay there until we figure this out. I have friends who can help, people with specific skill sets. Will you trust me to handle this? Every instinct Evelyn had screamed at her to take control, to throw money at the problem, to use her resources to protect them. But Daniel had been doing this kind of thing professionally for years. He knew how to handle threats in ways she never would. Yes, I trust you. But Daniel, if anything happens to either of you, nothing's going to happen. I didn't survive 15 years in hostile territory to get taken out protecting my daughter in Queens. His voice softened slightly. But Evelyn, you need to figure out what they want, why they're doing this, because until we know that, we're just reacting. He was right. Evelyn ended the call and turned to Jennifer, who'd been hovering anxiously. Get me everything we have on the Randall Industries situation. Every email, every financial transaction, every person who lost money when we acquired them. And get me the FBI agent who's handling Marcus's case, now. The next 6 hours were a blur of investigation and revelation. The FBI agent, a sharp woman named Chen, brought files that painted a disturbing picture. The attempted kidnapping hadn't been about ransom at all. It had been about forcing Evelyn to reverse the Randall acquisition, to somehow restore what had been destroyed. When that failed, when Daniel had intervened, the people behind it had shifted strategies. They're not trying to hurt you directly anymore, Agent Chen explained. They're trying to leverage what you care about. They know about your relationship with Mr. Reed and his daughter. They think they can use them to force your hand. Force my hand to do what? I can't unacquire a company. I can't bring back what's gone. No, but you can destroy the patents you acquired, release them to public domain, effectively undo the competitive advantage you gained. Agent Chen pulled up financial records. The remaining board members of Randall Industries have banded together. They're hemorrhaging money trying to rebuild, and they're desperate. Desperate people make bad choices. Evelyn thought about Marcus, who'd made a bad choice trying to help his sister. About the gunman at the cafe who'd been hired muscle, not the masterminds. About a chain of bad decisions stretching back to her own ruthless business practices. What if I give them what they want? Jennifer and Agent Chen both stared at her. You can't be serious, Jennifer said. Those patents are worth hundreds of millions. They're the foundation of your AI division. And Daniel and Maya are worth more than that, infinitely more. Evelyn's voice was steady. If I release the patents, if I give these people what they want, does this end? Agent Chen shook her head. Maybe. Or maybe they see it as weakness and demand more. Or maybe they decide you need to be punished regardless. There's no guarantee, Ms. Cross. These aren't rational actors operating in good faith. Then what do you suggest? Let us do our job. We're close to identifying the ringleaders. We have warrants, surveillance, cooperating witnesses. Give us another week and we can shut this down properly. Agent Chen leaned forward. But in the meantime, Mr. Reed and his daughter need to be somewhere safe, somewhere these people can't reach them. Evelyn made a decision. They can stay at my building, top floor security, controlled access, guards at every entrance. It's a fortress. It's also a known location. They already breached it once. Agent Chen pulled up building schematics. What about somewhere unexpected? Somewhere off the grid? Evelyn thought about her resources, her properties, her options. And then she remembered the lake house in upstate New York. Her first major purchase after Cross Industries went public. A retreat she'd visited maybe 3 times in 8 years. Remote, private, secured. I have a place, 3 hours north of the city. They wouldn't think to look there. By evening, the plan was in motion. Daniel packed bags for himself and Maya with the efficient precision of someone who'd done emergency evacuations before. Mrs. Chen promised to watch the apartment and forward any important mail, and Evelyn arranged for a discreet security team to transport them to the lake house under cover of darkness. Maya took it all as an adventure. Are we going on vacation? Can I bring Perseus? The stuffed dragon Evelyn had given her was clutched in her arms. Yes to both questions, Daniel told her, his voice calm despite the tension in his shoulders. We're going to stay at Evelyn's special house for a little while. It has a lake and trees and lots of room to explore. Will Evelyn be there? Daniel looked at Evelyn, who'd insisted on driving up with them despite Agent Chen's concerns. Yes, honey, she'll be there. The drive north was quiet. Maya fell asleep in the back seat 20 minutes out of the city, and Daniel and Evelyn sat in the front with their own thoughts. The security team followed in a second vehicle, professional and invisible. You don't have to do this, Daniel said finally. Put your life on hold, hide out in the woods with us. You have a company to run. The company can survive without me for a few days. You and Maya can't survive if these people get to you. Evelyn kept her eyes on the road. Besides, I've been working 80-hour weeks for 15 years. I think I'm due for some time off. This isn't exactly a vacation. No, but it's time with you and Maya. That's more valuable than any board meeting. She glanced at him. I'm not letting you face this alone. We're in this together, remember? You don't get to make that decision alone. Daniel smiled slightly, recognizing his own words thrown back at him. Fair enough. But when we get there, we do things my way. Security protocols, movement restrictions, all of it. This is my area of expertise. I trust you. The lake house appeared through the trees like something from a dream. Modern architecture nestled into the natural landscape, floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the moonlit water. Evelyn had bought it impulsively, seduced by the quiet and the view, and then never made time to actually use it. Now, pulling up the gravel drive with Daniel and Maya, she felt a different kind of seduction. The possibility of peace, of time suspended, of being somewhere the world couldn't reach them. Maya woke as they parked, rubbing her eyes and peering out at the unfamiliar surroundings. Whoa, this is your house, Evelyn. One of them. Come on, let's get you inside and settled. The security team swept the house first, checking every room and closet with professional thoroughness. Daniel watched them work with the critical eye of someone who'd done similar operations, occasionally pointing out potential vulnerabilities. By the time they cleared the house, a perimeter was established, and guards were positioned at strategic points. We'll do rotating shifts, the team leader told Daniel. 4-hour rotations, 2-person teams. You won't see us, but we'll be here. After they left, the house felt enormous and empty. Maya explored with delighted enthusiasm, discovering the reading nook by the fireplace, the game room with a pool table, the deck that overlooked the lake. Can we go swimming tomorrow? We'll see, Daniel said, which Maya correctly interpreted as probably not given the circumstances. But she didn't push, seemingly content to explore her temporary castle. Evelyn made hot chocolate while Daniel checked the locks and windows with habitual vigilance. When he returned to the kitchen, she handed him a mug. "You're in full protective mode." "Someone threatened my daughter. What did you expect?" "I expected exactly this. You, being thorough and careful and keeping us safe." She sipped her own chocolate. "I'm grateful and terrified and furious that we're in this situation at all. Welcome to loving people. It's terrifying because you have something to lose now." Daniel set down his mug and pulled her close, mindful of Maya playing in the next room. "But we're going to get through this. Agent Chen knows what she's doing. Your security team is top tier, and I'm not easy to kill, as recent events have demonstrated." "Don't joke about that." "I'm not joking. I'm stating facts." He kissed her forehead. "We're going to be okay." That night, after Maya was tucked into one of the guest rooms with Perseus and a nightlight, Daniel and Evelyn sat on the deck watching the moon ripple across the lake. The security team was invisible in the darkness, but knowing they were there provided a strange comfort. "I've been thinking," Evelyn said quietly, "about what Agent Chen said, about the patents. You're not actually considering giving them up." "I'm considering what's worth protecting and what's worth sacrificing." She turned to face him. "Those patents are just intellectual property, lines of code. They're valuable, sure, but they're not you. They're not Maya. If releasing them would end this, would keep you both safe, I'd do it in a heartbeat." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "And what message would that send? That threatening the people you love is an effective strategy? That you'll cave to extortion?" "I don't care about the message. I care about keeping you alive." "Evelyn," he took her hands. "I understand the impulse. I do. But you can't negotiate with terrorists. You can't reward bad behavior, because it never ends with just one demand. They'll always want more." "Then what do I do? Just wait here while Agent Chen tries to track them down? Hope they get arrested before they hurt someone I love?" Her voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "I'm not good at waiting. I'm good at taking action, at solving problems. This helplessness is killing me. So take action. Just not the action they want you to take." Daniel's eyes were serious. "You said you've been changing the company culture, making it more sustainable, more human. That's your action. Keep doing that. Build something they can't destroy because it's not based on ruthless competition and zero-sum thinking. Build something that makes their revenge meaningless." The words settled into Evelyn like seeds finding soil. He was right. The old version of Cross Industries, built on her fear and hunger, on the belief that crushing competitors was the only path to success. That was what had created enemies willing to threaten children. But the new version, the one she was still building, could be different. "I don't know if I can do that from a lake house in the middle of nowhere. You have a laptop and internet. Start documenting what you want the company to become. Write it down. Make it real. So when we get back, and we will get back, you know exactly what you're building toward." So that's what Evelyn did. Over the next few days, while Agent Chen worked her investigation and the security team maintained vigilance, Evelyn wrote. She documented every change she'd made, every lesson she'd learned from Daniel and Maya about what actually mattered. She drafted new corporate policies focused on sustainability and employee welfare. She created frameworks for measuring success that included community impact and worker satisfaction alongside profit margins. And Maya, oblivious to the danger hovering around them, had the vacation of her 7-year-old dreams. Daniel taught her to skip stones across the lake. Evelyn helped her build a fairy house from twigs and leaves. They played endless rounds of Sorry and read dragon books by the fireplace. It was domestic and peaceful and exactly what Evelyn had been missing without knowing it. On the 4th night, Agent Chen called. "We have them. 3 former Randall board members and the contractor they hired to coordinate everything. Caught them planning another attempt. They're in custody." Evelyn felt her knees go weak with relief. "Are you sure? All of them?" "All the active threats. There might be others who are just bitter but not actively planning harm, but the people who posed immediate danger are off the streets." Agent Chen paused. "You can come home, Ms. Cross. You and your family are safe." After she hung up, Evelyn stood on the deck and let herself shake. It was over. The immediate threat was neutralized. Daniel and Maya could go back to their lives without armed guards following them. Daniel found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Chen called me too. It's done. It's done, Evelyn repeated. Then she started crying, huge gasping sobs that she'd been holding back for months. All the fear and stress and terror of losing them poured out, and Daniel held her through it, steady as stone. I was so scared, she finally managed. So scared they'd hurt Maya, that you'd get killed protecting us, that I'd lose everything that matters before I even really had it. But you didn't. We're here. We're safe. And Evelyn, he turned her to face him. You have us. You've had us for a while now. You just needed to believe it. They went home the next day, but something had shifted. The apartment in Queens didn't feel like Daniel's place anymore. It felt like home, like where Evelyn belonged. She started keeping clothes there, a toothbrush, her laptop, started planning her schedule around Maya's soccer games and school events, started having dinner there more nights than not. At work, the changes she'd drafted at the lake house were implemented with surprising enthusiasm. The employees who'd been skeptical saw that Evelyn's commitment to the new culture had survived a literal death threat. If she was willing to prioritize people over patents, even when being extorted, maybe this wasn't just performative corporate speak. 2 months after the arrest, Evelyn stood in front of her board of directors and made an announcement. I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations. I'll remain CEO, but I'm reducing my hours significantly. Jennifer will be promoted to COO and will handle much of the operational decision-making. There was shocked silence. Finally, one of the board members spoke. Ms. Cross, is this because of the threats? Because we can increase security? It's because I've learned what actually matters. And it's not maximizing every possible hour for profit. It's being present for the people I love. It's building a company that can run without me micromanaging every detail. It's trusting the team I've built. She looked around the table. Cross Industries will be fine, but better than fine, because we're finally becoming sustainable, not just financially, but humanly. After the meeting, Jennifer cornered her in the hallway. Are you sure about this? The board is going to test whether you mean it. Let them. I do mean it. Evelyn smiled. I'm going to Maya's class play this afternoon. She's playing a night this time. I'm not missing it for a board meeting. The play was chaotic and adorable. Maya delivered her lines with passionate commitment, waved at Evelyn and Daniel in the audience, and beamed when they applauded. Afterward, she ran to them for hugs, still wearing her cardboard armor. Did you see me? I remembered all my words. You were amazing, Evelyn told her, and meant it with her whole heart. That evening, at dinner in the small apartment that had become more home than her penthouse, Maya made an announcement. Emma's having a birthday party at the skating rink. Can Evelyn come too? Emma's mom said I could bring my family. Family. The word hung in the air. Daniel looked at Evelyn, a question in his eyes. I'd love to come, Evelyn said, if that's okay with your dad. More than okay. Daniel's voice was rough with emotion. You are family, Evelyn, if you want to be. Maya looked between them with the frank assessment children were so good at. Does this mean you're going to get married and Evelyn's going to move in? Daniel laughed. You're relentless, you know that? Mrs. Chen says I have focus. It's a good quality. Maya returned to her dinner. But seriously, are you? Evelyn felt her heart hammering. They'd been dancing around this question for months, getting closer but never quite addressing it directly. And now a 7-year-old was forcing the issue with her characteristic bluntness. Maya, Daniel started, that's something Evelyn and I need to discuss privately. Yes, Evelyn said. Both Daniel and Maya stared at her. I mean, if Daniel's asking, the answer is yes. To all of it. Moving in, getting married, being a family. Yes. Daniel's expression cycled through shock, joy, and something that looked like relief. I was going to ask eventually, but I didn't think. I'm tired of waiting for eventually. I'm tired of being scared of what might go wrong instead of embracing what's already right. Evelyn looked at Maya. If you'll have me. If you're okay with me being around all the time, helping with homework and going to soccer games and being part of your family. Maya considered this with her usual seriousness. Then she nodded decisively. Okay, but you have to learn to make grilled cheese the right way, the way Mom used to make it. Dad taught me, and I can teach you." Tears were streaming down Evelyn's face, and she didn't care. "Deal." Daniel was out of his chair, pulling Evelyn up and into his arms, kissing her while Maya made exaggerated gagging sounds and then giggled. "Are you sure?" he asked when they broke apart. "This is fast. We can take our time. I've spent my whole life taking my time, being strategic, planning everything to death. And I almost lost you because I was too scared to admit how much you both meant to me. I'm done being strategic about love. I'm all in. If you'll have me. Evelyn, I've been in love with you since you showed up at the hospital looking terrified and trying to pretend you weren't. Since you sat with me and listened to me talk about Sarah and didn't run away from the grief. Since you learned to paint dragons with Maya and played sorry even though she kept destroying you." He cupped her face in his hands. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Maya applauded. "Can I be in the wedding? Emma was a flower girl at her mom's wedding, and she got to wear a fancy dress." "You can absolutely be in the wedding," Evelyn promised. "You can help plan the whole thing." The next few months were a whirlwind. Evelyn sold her penthouse and moved into the apartment in Queens, then immediately started looking for a bigger place that could fit all of them comfortably. They found a townhouse in a neighborhood where Maya could walk to school, with a yard for playing and enough space for everyone to have their own room while still feeling close. The wedding was small, just family and close friends, Mrs. Chen and Maya's teacher, Jennifer, and a handful of Evelyn's employees, some of Daniel's former teammates, who flew in and spent the whole time looking slightly bemused that their brother-in-arms had married a tech billionaire. Maya wore a purple dress to match Perseus and took her flower girl duties with the utmost seriousness. Evelyn wore a simple dress, not the designer gown her old self would have demanded. Daniel wore a suit that probably came off a rack, and he'd never looked more handsome. And when they exchanged vows, promises about being present and choosing love and building something real together, Evelyn felt like she was finally becoming the person she was always meant to be. At the reception, held in the backyard of their new townhouse, Maya gave a toast. She was 7 years old and mostly talked about how Evelyn had learned to make grilled cheese the right way and how they were going to get a dog now that they had a yard. But at the end, she said something that made every adult in attendance tear up. "When my mom died, I was really sad. And Dad was sad too. And I thought maybe we'd be sad forever." She looked at Daniel and Evelyn with perfect seriousness. But then Evelyn came and she was kind of mean at first, but then she got better. And now Dad smiles all the time and we have a bigger house and I'm going to have a stepmom who's really good at business stuff, but also plays dragons with me. So I think Mom would be happy. Because we're happy. Daniel was crying openly. Evelyn was crying. Half the guests were crying. Mrs. Chen declared it the best wedding speech she'd ever heard and demanded seconds of everything. Later, when the party had wound down and Maya was asleep upstairs, Daniel and Evelyn sat in their new backyard under a sky full of stars. "Thank you," Daniel said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave enough to change. For not giving up when it got hard. For choosing us, even though it meant rebuilding your entire life." He pulled her close. "I know what you sacrificed. The company structure, the penthouse, the identity you'd built. That wasn't easy. It was the easiest decision I've ever made." Evelyn turned to face him. "Because I finally understood what you tried to tell me at the hospital. That real strength isn't about being hard all the time. It's about being soft when it matters. About choosing connection over protection. About building a life worth living instead of just an empire worth bragging about. You built both. Cross Industries is thriving. Cross Industries is thriving because I'm not strangling it with my need for control. Because I let good people do their jobs. Because I finally learned that success isn't about how much you can accumulate, but about how much you can contribute." She smiled. "You taught me that. You and Maya. We learned from you too. Maya's more confident now. More willing to try new things because she watched you struggle with painting and soccer games and all the stuff you weren't naturally good at. She learned that adults can grow and change too. And you? I learned that I could love again. That opening my heart didn't betray Sarah's memory. It honored it, because she wanted me to live fully, and I couldn't do that while keeping everyone at arm's length." He kissed her softly. "You saved me just as much as I saved you. Maybe more. 6 months into their marriage, Evelyn got a call from Agent Chen. The former Randall board members had been sentenced, and Marcus had received a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation. Helen and her children were doing well. The trust fund Evelyn had established providing stability they'd never had before. "There's something else," Agent Chen said. "One of the Randall defendants wants to speak with you. Part of his plea deal involves making amends. He wants to apologize." Evelyn thought about it. The old version of herself would have refused, would have seen it as weakness. But she'd learned something about forgiveness and grace from watching Daniel with Maya, from seeing how he'd chosen to remember Sarah with love instead of bitterness. "Okay, I'll meet with him." The meeting happened in a conference room with Agent Chen present. The man, Roger Randall, founder's son, looked smaller than she remembered, diminished by guilt and consequence. "Ms. Cross, I don't expect you to forgive me. What I did, what we did, was unconscionable. Threatening a child, trying to hurt innocent people because we were angry at you." He couldn't meet her eyes. "My father built that company from nothing. When you acquired it, when we lost everything, I felt like you'd killed him. He died 6 months later, heart attack. And I blamed you." "I'm sorry for your loss," Evelyn said, and meant it. "But your father's death wasn't my fault. The acquisition was legal, aggressive, yes, but legal. I know that now. But at the time, all I could see was that you'd destroyed his legacy, and he died believing he was a failure. So I wanted you to hurt the way we hurt, to lose something that mattered." Roger looked up, finally. "But then I saw the articles about how you'd changed your company, about the new policies, the focus on people instead of just profit. And I realized you'd already learned what I was trying to teach you through violence, that there are costs to ruthless business practices, that people matter more than patents." Evelyn absorbed that. "What you did was still wrong, still illegal, still hurt people I love. I know, and I'll spend the next decade in prison understanding that. But I wanted you to know the person I wanted to punish doesn't exist anymore. You changed. You became something better. And I'm sorry I couldn't see that before I tried to destroy you." After the meeting, Evelyn sat in her car for a long time. Then she called Daniel. "Hey," he answered. "How did it go?" He apologized. Really apologized, not just because his lawyer told him to. He said, "I'd already learned the lesson he was trying to teach me through violence." She paused. "Do you think that's true? That I really changed?" "I think you're still changing, every day. That's what growth is, not a destination, but a direction." She could hear Maya in the background asking if Evelyn was coming home soon. "We're making dinner, spaghetti. Maya wants to show you the dragon she drew at school today. I'll be home in 20 minutes. Home. The word no longer meant a penthouse fortress or even the townhouse they'd bought together. It meant wherever Daniel and Maya were. It meant belonging. It meant finally understanding that the worst first impression of her life had led to the best version of herself. Evelyn drove through Queens as the sun set, and she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a scared kid in Philadelphia to a ruthless CEO, to a woman sitting in a hospital room watching a maintenance worker bleed, for her to someone who'd learned that real power wasn't about domination, but connection. About choosing kindness even when it was harder than cruelty. About measuring worth by how you treated people when they couldn't benefit you. Maya met her at the door, purple dragon drawing in hand, and launched into an enthusiastic explanation of its features. Daniel was in the kitchen stirring sauce, and he looked up when Evelyn entered with a smile that still made her heart skip. "Welcome home." And Evelyn Cross, former billionaire ice queen, current wife and stepmother, perpetual work in progress, smiled back and meant it when she said, "It's good to be home," because she'd finally learned what success really looked like. Not a corner office or a stock price or a reputation that made people fear you. Success was a 7-year-old showing you her dragon drawing. Success was a husband who'd seen you at your worst and loved you anyway. Success was becoming someone worth saving instead of just someone with enough money to buy protection. Success was measuring your life by how much love you gave instead of how much power you accumulated. And by that measure, Evelyn Cross was finally, truly, completely successful.